Good evening and welcome to the big National League preview with the Magpie Circle pundit of the year. Back from the crease, don't know how many runs you've been piling up, Stel. You just got edged out in the draft for the Trent Rockets, didn't you? A warm welcome, Mark Stallard.
Cheers, Paul. Yeah. I must have just missed out. Yeah, not enough runs. We're struggling at the bottom of the table when I'm leaving them there. So hopefully they'll pick up now. I'm away and back on commentary duty. So fingers crossed for that.
Hey, delighted to have you back. You've not got it yet. I can't blame the postman because the Magpie Circle, here it is, pundit of the season award is still here at Mace Towers. So we will be seeing you at Barnet, all things being equal, on Saturday, and we'll give you your trophy. And if anyone else out there hasn't had their trophies yet, we are working on it. So, Mark, tonight, here's what we want to talk about. Firstly, I want to just give a bit of a promo for thanks to the club, very kind of them, and also to the individual players. We've done some big interviews with Kyle Cameron and Richard Brindley so far. Both spoke extremely well. And we've also done 90 minutes, and that can't be said very often recently, with Kel Roberts. He managed a full 90 minutes with us and 10 minutes stoppage time. Brilliant interview. Very honest talks, just how difficult it was and the depths of despair he went through. And I'm sure you could appreciate this, Stal, with a whole succession of injuries. How he swapped shirts with Kevin De Bruyne. He's done well there, hasn't he, to say he was only on the Newcastle subs bench at the time. How he turned down, how about this one, Stal? A 3-year deal with Greek giants Panathinaikos.
Wow.
Would you have turned one of them down?
Playing in that heat, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I can only do it now. I lose a bit of weight, but that takes some doing.
Yeah,
so it shows the interest that he had, though.
Absolutely. And so that is available from 7 o'clock on Thursday evening. And we've also got, you can see the shirt behind me just there, a match worn prepared Kel Roberts worn shirt from pre-season last year. Kel's kindly agreed to sign that and dedicate that to the winner of our competition. All you have to do is click the red button, if not already, and subscribe. It's absolutely free. If you've already subscribed, don't worry. And then in the message section under our competition video, just put down, come on, you pies, or any good luck message that you'd like to give to Kel or to Notts County. Right. That's the opening done. We are going to be bang on time tonight, 7 till 8. Stels, lots of us have done our top sevens and all that sort of thing. I want to kick off, given, you are, I think you're certainly in the top 10 all-time Notts County club goal scorers. I want to talk battle for the Golden Boot, because clearly that is going to be very, very interesting this year. Their clubs have splashed a lot of cash, and presumably big wages. Kabongo Chimanga gone to Chesterfield, reportedly, according to Lee Curtis, a transfer fee of £250,000. Paul Mullin has gone to Wrexham. Dallas, sadly, didn't take too long to get off the mark after moving to Solihull on Saturday against us, opening 10 or 15 minutes. Paddy Madden went to Stockport last year. Others as well. I guess strikers are always going to be in demand, Mark, aren't they? Has it surprised you just how big some of the promotion-chasing clubs have gone this summer?
I wouldn't say it surprised me massively, because we obviously knew at the back end of last season what was happening at Wrexham, particularly, Ryan Reynolds and that, the Hollywood connection. So we suspected that money was going to come into the game from their aspect. And, you see the players that they've signed, and particularly the standout signing of the summer is Paul Mullin, who was leading scorer in League Two last season, supposedly turning down offers from the Championship and League One to drop down to play for Wrexham. They've signed others as well that won't have come cheap. Stockport as well had signed players at the back end of last season. You mentioned Paddy Madden. You knew that maybe weren't going to stop there. Chesterfield last season signed Danny Rowe when we come into the sort of leading scorer sort of aspect, and he was sort of brought in to play alongside that Asante, who got a long-term injury. I know that he'd scored goals at Chesterfield when he came there alongside the manager. So we know that there's money about in the National League and money being paid in the National League. So it's no surprise that them three clubs particularly, along with one or two others, have thrown some real good cash about this summer, chasing that elusive spot to get into or the two spots, if you like, to get back into the Football League. And one thing that doesn't surprise me, it's only in doing my sort of research, preparing for the this season and what have you, and I had a look over the last 10 years, the 20 promoted clubs from the National League into the Football League. So the last 10 years, obviously the winner and then whoever wins the playoffs, 20 clubs promoted, only 3 are currently back in the National League. So the vast majority, once you make that step up, you stay in the EFL. So again, it's so difficult of a league to get out of, but the stats there sort of back up that if you get out of it, and you've got to be a good team to get out of it, you've got to have good players to get yourselves out of it, the stats back up that you stay out of it. Now, whether that's through a push through spending more money, I don't think it necessarily is the case. I think that says that if you get out of the National League, you're on an upward curve, upward spiral, and 17 out of 20 clubs over the last 10 years have stayed within the EFL. And that, to me, shows that the gap between the National League at the top, very top, and League Two is not massive. So if you can make that step, it's so difficult. And that's probably what is convincing clubs, when they've got this money, to go and get a goal scorer, to go and get the goals, to try and buy your way out of the division. No proof in that, no guarantee in that. We've seen clubs throw money about before. With Notts have been there themselves not too many years ago, haven't we? And we saw what happened there. So there's no guarantees with all this money, but it goes to show you what the prize is there for.
Great stat, by the way. Love that stat. Let's get read out a few messages. SB says, evening, we'll be listening in the car on the way home from Babbacombe, just outside Torquay. Should have dropped into Torquay to see if they had anything else to give us. That's from Sally. Hope it's a bit quicker than your journey down there last season for the playoff, because that was a bit of a monster, wasn't it, with you and Charlie?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, and obviously it felt like even further coming back after we'd been beat. So we might as well just drove off Babbacombe Cliff or whatever, Babbacombe Model Village, isn't it, down there? I remember that. Yeah, the Model Village. But yeah, I mean,
did you see Dion Kelly Evans down there?
Pardon?
Did you see Dion Kelly Evans at the Model Village?
What was he, life size? Probably tackling all the players, all the models there as well. He would be, but no. But
in too.
Exactly, yeah. But lovely part of the world down there. But we don't want to talk about the playoffs last season.
No. Calvin Hallam says, my favourite time of the week with these podcasts, bar from Saturdays now. Chris Jordan, evening, gents. Athenian pie. Good evening from Athens, clearly, where else? Let's get into the league. Start well, 32 wins to go. Kevin J.S. Duska Jr. from Montreal, evening, lads. John Parr, National League this season seems a better quality league than League Two. At least 14 teams could play in the EFL. Dale Pikett, the league will be a bloodbath this season with all the big teams in it. And Burchnall Stell, the stat man, 1862 Notts County. Notts desperately need a goal scorer. If not, we've not a prayer of promotion. Ian Burchnall, Paul, you wouldn't say that to DKE on the pitch. You're damn right I wouldn't. Not unless I got Vinnie Jones as my enforcer nearby. Stell, you're not going to get off that easily. So, who's your money on to be the National League Golden Boot? Of the strikers you've seen out there, just park Notts for a minute, because we'll talk about Notts attacking options, because they're doing it in a slightly different way. Who do you like the look of the most of these strikers?
Well, I said last season I like Cheek, who's at Bromley, but he's, parking to one side because he's at Bromley. He's been in the National League for a bit. If you're talking about them new signings, got to admit, I've not seen a lot of Mullen, but having got the Golden Boot in League Two, and you would expect him to come down, and he's going to have a massive weight of expectation on him. Quigley didn't get a mention. I say he's come down to Stockport, who was leading scorer for Barrow a couple of seasons ago when they got out the division, wasn't he? So there's a lot of decent strikers there. But for me, the one, and I think he was sort of semi-linked a little bit with Notts, I don't know how serious it was, is Shimanga. Not because I think, not because I rate him as an all-round striker from what I've seen of him, but just a goal record at this level. He's one of them players that looks like an out-and-out goal scorer. Doesn't do a great deal of a lot else for your team, but he gets you goals in the penalty area. A little bit of pace, a little bit of power, but he's got that knack of knowing where to be. So, you put him in that Chesterfield team. He's got good competition. He's going to have Danny Rowe up there alongside, so might have to do a fair bit of work alongside him. And you don't know how Chesterfield are going to line up. But as an out-and-out goal scorer, he scored goals at Boreham Wood, for a couple of 3 seasons. He'll be one to watch. I don't know who the bookies make favourites. I'm not able to look at the markets. And like I say, you asked where my money would be. Well, there wouldn't be a lot of money. It's not going to swing any odds anyway. But he'd be one I'd be interested to see him, because I thought he was the sort of player that Notts would have thrived with. Let's put it that way. He was the sort of player. Now you're talking £250,000 transfer fee. If that's the case, then at this level that is a massive gamble. But I'd be interested to seeing him. So I mean, it's difficult, isn't it, to say you've got the leading scorer from League Two, you've got Quigley, you've got whoever else, you've got Danny Rowe who's already there. There'll be a couple of Notts players we'll speak about who will want to be in that shake-up, but we'll come on to them. It's intriguing, it's exciting, and also I think from a Notts perspective could even do Notts a little bit of a favour, because all these players that are going to the Chesterfield, Wrexham, Stockport, there are other clubs with other strikers who will want to be in that mix as well. But they have got a weight of expectation that come with it now. And we spoke about Notts being the big club, the big fish in the slightly smaller pond at this level. Well, you've got other clubs now going out and doing business that is real headline-making business. And that adds the weight of expectation on their backs and on their shoulders. They've got to carry that throughout the season. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But we've said it can have an adverse effect. We've mentioned it at Notts previously, just that weight of expectation. Now, this season, with Notts doing you would say Notts have gone about their business quietly, calmly. No real headline makers, but some decent business there. And we certainly hope they prove to be decent business or headline-making business over the season. But it's the others that have gone out there and, I say, thrown the cash around, thrown the money around, paid the wages, paid transfer fees. So that brings pressure and expectation with it. And, pressure and expectation at these sort of levels can lie heavy on people and teams.
I put on my 2009 championship shirt. Here's a guy who would have been Golden Boot. What do you reckon?
Without a shadow. Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for another one of them, or Hughesy to still be capable of a comeback. Never mind. Kelvin Hallam says, Shimanga for me, Golden Boot. NCFC Pie. Didn't Mullin have Wes Houlihan providing balls through to him at Cambridge? Can he do it on a wet, windy Tuesday night at Wealdstone? Who knows? He's still no Roberts, Rodriguez or Wootton. Kelvin Hallam again. I believe not so dark horses this year with the amount of big teams spending big bucks. Mick Dundee, where else? From Melbourne in Australia. Dale Pykick, Kyle Wootton, 20-1 for top scorer, worth a fiver, lads. Now that brings us on to right on cue. So continuing the striking, the goal threat. Notts is kind of we look at 3 players, don't we, to get the goals for Notts County this season to get back into the EFL. Kyle Wootton clearly as your central fulcrum, and then the gossip, the inside talk and chat is of Kel Roberts and Ruben Rodriguez kind of flitting in behind. However, Ian sets up the tactics. As those 3, what do you think of those 3? Who do you think of those three will get the most goals at the end of the season? I mean, that's an interesting debating point. Can those three get the goals to get us into the EFL?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it is fascinating, and this is the debate we'll have all season, and we'll see. It will play itself out. There is you made a good point there. Which one of them three will end up with the most goals? Kyle Wootton, obviously leading scorer last season, but Cal Roberts is almost like a new signing. We're talking about headline-making signings for other teams. Cal Roberts barely played last season, really. Well, half a dozen games he was involved in, 1 or 2 when he was injured. So he's almost like a new signing if he's fit. If we can get him back fit and a run of games and obviously back up to speed. But, he seems to have gone all right in pre-season. So he's going to be like a star signing for Notts alongside those that have been brought in new to the club. Ruben Rodriguez, for his first season, I think improved throughout the season, showed flashes for the first half of the season. And then really, well, I remember it was the Altrincham game where he sort of had a poorish first half, but then scored a worldy free kick and just went on from there. He was fantastic from there to the end of the season. Can he carry that on? It's the second season sort of thing now. Yes, you've had a decent-ish first season. Can you improve? You've got to improve. We need you to improve. Can you go on and take that step now? You've got your feet under the table. There'll be fans back in the grounds again, which we know we had at the last couple of games. But I think that'll be massive for the likes of Cal Roberts, for the likes of Ruben Rodriguez, your sort of creative X-factor players that can produce a little bit of magic. I'm sure they rely on, I'm never that sort of player myself, but I'm sure they rely on fans being there, the atmosphere, the crowd getting behind you, the ups and the downs of a 90 minutes and the atmosphere that generates. They feed off that. I'm sure they will. So for Ruben Rodriguez to have had a decent season, his first season in a foreign country, empty stadia, now he's going to have crowds in there week in, week out. And I think he's the sort of player that will bring the best out of. Cal Roberts, I think, likewise. I think he will thrive playing in front of people. They want to get people off their seats. So from a Notts perspective, that's all exciting. Yes, it can work. Of course, that front three, I think Kyle Wootton as your spearhead, he does what he does, a fantastic job for the team. And with them two given a bit of license to play in behind him at the same time, making runs, sometimes going in behind, sometimes coming short, just sharing the workload. I think other teams will have their hands full trying to close doors on them three. So promising, but obviously they're 3 players. It's about a squad. It's about the team. It's more than 3 players. But that is a front 3. Keep them fit. Keep them playing well. That you expect to be up at the sharp end of the table. At the end of the season, if you do that.
Ian Burchnall, my concern is if Wootton gets injured, who steps in? NCFC Pie, slightly off topic, but have we confirmed we've got Stell and Charlie on commentary again this year? Have we?
Well, nobody's told me not to, so we're going down to Barnet. We'll take our box to commentate on, and hopefully people will be able to hear us, or maybe not. But I can confirm that I'm intending to, and Charlie's intending to. So they've not told us no.
Yeah, so I think the answer to that NCFC Pie is yes. Paul Smith, is Saturday's match at Barnet being live streamed? Do you know whether any of Notts' matches are planned to be live streamed this season? It'd be a useful source of additional income for most clubs. Don't believe it is, Paul. There's kind of like blackout periods for when games can be live streamed, and certainly that blackout period extends on a Saturday afternoon, which I think negates most of them. And we did have a discussion about this, might have been last week's show. Normally the home club would have to give a special dispensation, and that tends to be governed, if it's going to be given at all, if the away team have sold the maximum number of tickets that the home club is prepared to allow them to, because clearly what they don't want is 300 Notts fans not travelling because they can watch it on a stream. That home team then loses that revenue. Okay. Right, Stel, as the Magpie Circle pundit of the season, I thought you nailed it with a comment that you made in one of the shows. I think it might have been the last show of last season. when you spoke about the change in style, much more entertaining, more goals, but ultimately the net turn of points was broadly similar. The club played a more attacking style, a more entertaining style. We scored more goals and we conceded more goals. We spoke a bit about goal threat. How important is it? Is it a concern to you that Notts are going to keep that goals against sheet down? I don't know whether I personally don't, but if you looked at friendlies, we've let in something like 8 goals in the last pre-season, in the last 3 friendly games. What are your thoughts at the back?
Well, that's a concern because from last season it was a problem. You know, we saw it for large parts of last season that, you know, certainly from crosses and set pieces, it became a problem, and it needs to improve. There's no two ways about it. I'm like you. I don't read much into pre-season friendlies. Pre-season friendlies, having played in no end of them, 18, 19 pre-seasons, they're more about getting up to speed, getting your fitness, getting your acquaintance with your teammates. You know, and sometimes managers keep the cards close to the chest a little bit in terms of not playing their team that they're going to play, because other people can come and watch and have a look and learn 1 or 2 things from you. So you don't show your hand in pre-season, pretty much. You know, you get what you need out of it. So I'm like you. I would take pre-season games with a pinch of salt. Nobody remembers them. Sort of in 2 weeks' time, they're sort of forgotten about, but they're there for a purpose, for the players and the management, the coaching staff, to get what they need out of it. Look, it's speaking the obvious, isn't it? It's speaking the blindingly obvious to say Notts finished 5th last season. We were quite away from the top of the table. It's got to be said, hasn't it? What, 14 points off the top? So there needs to be improvement both ends of the pitch. We need to score more goals and we need to concede less goals. Not vast amounts, but we need to improve at both ends of the pitch. And I think for me, it's so easy to say we need to improve at both ends of the pitch. I think we've got the players. I think we've got the squad. We've got the talent, the capabilities. I think we've got to improve our ruthlessness, our professionalism, our ruthlessness at both ends of the pitch, in both penalty areas. I think that's where so many games are won and lost. That's where the fine margins in football come in. Both penalty areas are where games are won and lost, and that might be the difference between a couple of points being dropped, you know, here and there. First game of the season, Saturday, Barnet is an absolute. Can you have a banana skin before a ball's being kicked? But with Barnet finishing at the bottom of the league last season after Dover were taken out of it,
I forgot that. Well, yeah, I forgot that.
Yeah, bottom of the table, they were in a bit of disarray, weren't they, for large parts of the season, Barnet? Yes, they've had a turnaround. Obviously, Notts connections with Harry Kewell there managing, and Jamie Turley's there now, the centre half that we had a couple of years ago. So, you know, there's a bit of a rebuilding job going on at Barnet. But again, professionalism, ruthlessness says that this is a winnable game. You know, it sounds ridiculous before a ball's been kicked. So let's not do what we did last year and go down to Dover and lose. You know, thankfully we got them points back because of what went on subsequently. But I'm saying the ruthlessness starts. If you want to be at that top end of the table, the ruthlessness has got to start. It should have started the minute the last pre-season friendlies finished. You know, the focus is this Saturday matters. That's all that matters. 3 points at Barnet. And that's the sort of ruthlessness that we need. We've got the ability. We've got the players. You know, we're starting from a decent position. Okay, 5th last season, close, but no cigar. Same the season before, if you like, close, but no cigar. There's got to be a determination with the players that have already been there and the new players coming in to say, let's not have half a dozen games before we get up to speed. It's a winnable game. First game of the season is a winnable game, although it's away from home. Let's go and get 3 points and get the season right off and, you know, up to speed straight away.
Kelvin Hallam says, I felt Notts overplayed far too much sideways passing when when players were making runs and the person on the ball decided not to take the risk. Mick Dundee would like to see more depth in the defensive third. Duncan Comrie, if Kel Roberts hits the ground running, can we keep him past January? Let's just keep focusing on defence. I think you'll have probably seen that Notts appointed a new first team coach yesterday. Alex Clapham, been in English, coached get this right, Getafe under 18s, under 19s, and more recently was coaching at a Swedish fourth tier club that there is no way I'm going to try and pronounce it, but it had a few Y's and a few T's in it, and I'm not quite sure where it is in Sweden. But anyway, so welcome to Alex. I think it sparked quite a bit of interest when the job description was posted on the club website. And it was easy, he says, to sort of give it a bit of the Alan Partridge in terms of the phraseology and the importance around coaching restarts and those sorts of things. And reading the comments from Ian, it's clear a not insignificant part of Alex's role is to focus on restarts, so corners, set pieces, offensively, defensively. I think Liverpool were the subject of a little bit of derision, weren't they, a year or two ago when they appointed a throw-in coach? Yeah, and clearly the old stages go, God, blimey, right? Football moves on. People pay a lot of respect and credence to the way Brentford have achieved the success, and clearly this is quite a specialist appointment, or a slightly different CV than you might see for a first team coach. A lot of statistical data in the background, clearly from Football Radar. What do you make of it all?
Well, without knowing Alex Clapham, you'd have to go that the due diligence has been done, just like you would on any coach. Bringing somebody in, I don't see any reason with progression, any problem, should I say, with progression. If you can afford a salary for somebody who is good at what they do, they've obviously proved that with a CV, the due diligence I spoke about. If you can afford a salary for somebody to come in and largely, I'm not sure it's going to be solely looking at restarts and set pieces and that.
The focus that they've kind of attached to it that I think people are reading into.
Yeah. But why not? You talk about the derision Liverpool fan, for a throw-in coach. Well, nobody's ever had a throw-in coach. But that's groundbreaking then, isn't it? Surely, if nobody's ever had one before, that is trying to leave no stone unturned. Yes, people might say, well, it's a throw-in here. But when you're looking for small margins in professional sport, and Liverpool at the very, sort of top, the pinnacle, the elite of professional sport, why wouldn't you look for them small margins? Certainly money's no object for them for a coach's salary for it. So, bringing it back down to Notts, absolutely use as much sort of at your disposal as you can possibly get to put as much in your plus column that you can possibly get. So if that's somebody specifically working at set pieces, that's one thing that's never changed over the years. Set pieces are an absolute vital part of football. They always have been, and they probably always will be, no matter what happens. The stats will back that up. It's absolutely vital. And last season, we saw a bit of a weakness in both boxes. Again, I don't think we scored enough from set pieces, corners particularly. We were talking about the centre halves not scoring until Mark Ellis came to the club and showed that it was possible. So from my perspective, if that's something Ian Burchnall's maybe thought, look, we've got a little bit of a weakness here, we could do with, he obviously has to put it to the chairman and the owners and say, look, I'd like to bring somebody in to be a coach, to do all the coaching and help out in that respect, but with a particular focus on the set pieces, on the restarts, because I think we need to improve particularly in that area, then I don't see it as a bad thing at all.
Some more comments. Ian Burchnall, we know Sutton's success came from consistency. Average 2 points per game has to be the aim. 3 points Saturday has to be the target. Dave Woolley, what about the loss of Doyle in midfield? Mick Dundee says Matty Palmer has that under control and he has better ball control and pace. Dave Woolley, Notts gave the ball away in every throw in, have done for ages. Kelvin Hallam, at least the club has a clear vision now, and knowing the style and way the coaches are being brought in work. As before, it was pot luck. Feel like it is going towards the Brentford model. Kelvin Hallam also feel a sports psychologist could be of benefit to players. Dale Pike, it says Alex Clapham looks like Notts former player Elliot Hewitt. Martin Hearson says, I reckon I've got a 50-50 chance of becoming the new coin toss coach. There you go.
Hey.
Yeah, very good, Martin. Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. Okay, so it's one thing you get a specialist in for restarts and focusing. Now, when we had Kel Roberts on in the lengthy interview that we've done, that is available from Thursday, Kel volunteered some very interesting stuff. And he said there had been, among a variety of team meetings that have taken place this summer, the players were told they have a night that they can create for themselves a 19% better chance of winning the National League title. And that 19%, yeah, I know. You see, you've not heard the little clips from Kel yet.
Right.
19% has been computed. It's been computed on the basis of exactly what you've spoken about. Scoring, being more ruthless from set pieces at one end of the pitch and conceding fewer at the other. And the stats that were given to the players were that if they can collectively defensively concede 4 fewer goals from set pieces than they did this season, are you still with me? And score 6 more, I think it was 6 more from set pieces at the other end. That's the Football Radar boys have done their sums, and that gives us a 19% better chance of winning the National League title. There you go.
Wow. And I thought I was dull. So hold on, let me just get that.
Compute that yourself for a minute.
Have I understood that right? So a 10-goal swing, basically, concede 4 less, was it, and score 6 more.
Yeah, this is focused just on
set pieces.
Yeah, but that alone, somehow it's been computed, gives
us a 19% more chance
of winning the National League title, coming first. I'm guessing they've used a weighting, for points, concession of goals, not scoring goals at the other end, and that swings a points churn, if you know what I mean. I'm guessing.
Yeah. I mean, it's logic, isn't it? Not the 19% bit. How they've quite calculated that, I don't know. But it's logic. If you concede 4 less goals and score 6 more than we did last season, we've definitely got a better chance of winning it. But never mind 19. I'd like us to have 100% more chance, because last season we didn't win it. I'd like us this season to win it. So, yeah, like I say, that's a great computer algorithm. I mean, fantastic. But put more simply, if we concede less and score more, we've got a better chance of winning the game. I think that's more of a nutshell. Improve at set pieces in both boxes.
Right. Okay. So here's interesting. So that is, if you like, the appliance of data. Yeah. And clearly Brentford at the minute have garnered a huge amount of plaudits for the way they've achieved what they have achieved. But ultimately, you're a player, we're a player. It's down to those players to implement a philosophy. And at the minute, we I think Ian has set out a philosophy, hasn't he? He set out a different philosophy to the way we were playing football before. An all-embracing philosophy, that buying and getting the players into that philosophy. But that philosophy has to deliver results, doesn't it? Because if it doesn't deliver results, then people will just say the philosophy is flawed. And clearly set pieces is something that everybody seems to be majoring on. Fans have said it for a long time, haven't they? We're not good at both ends. This is kind of a statistical approach to it. But at the end of the day, the book will stop with our centre halves, first headers from corners, set pieces, wing backs, midfielders stopping crosses coming in from a defensive perspective. And I guess if you were really playing devil's advocate, probably the player that won most headers last season and scored most headers or whatever from set pieces is no longer with the club. Mark Ellis, who's gone. I think he's been made club captain by Mark Cooper, hasn't he, at Barrow?
Yeah.
Clearly, I think we all think Slocum one of the best keepers. Do you think we have got? Let's just focus on defence for a minute, because I think that will be the area which one or two fans are saying we've really got to make sure this is tight. Do you think we've got the capability to be able to be much more miserly, much more ruthless, and to finally address tangibly the challenges we have had in defending set pieces?
Well, that is the $64 million question, isn't it? Because we're looking at the new players coming in, Kyle Cameron, in them areas. You're looking at maybe Ed Francis, who's sort of been earmarked, hasn't he, for that sort of holding role, if you like. And then players in front of them, Joel Taylor at the wing back, maybe Matty Palmer in front of them for a bit of experience to get on the ball. My mind's still blown on that stat, and the only thing I can think of for it is I would have loved to have been in a room when the football player went, or either in my time or a player we've spoke about already, Lee Hughes. Imagine giving him that statistic. It's great. It's fantastic. You're saying, well, 19% improvement if you concede 4 less. Brilliant. But the bottom line, joking aside, the bottom line is we've got to defend set pieces better than we did last season, and we've got to attack set pieces better than we did last season. I'm not bothered about percentages. Players aren't bothered about percentages. Like I said, I can imagine Hughesy getting that and throwing it up and walking out like no chance. It's as simple as that. The bottom line is them stats are worthwhile in terms of they're saying, look, if we do improve in them areas, we give ourselves a better chance of winning the league. So therefore, it's then come to, on the training ground or with recruitment and a combination of both, having to be better on the pitch this season, because everything else has gone. All the stats are based on things that have gone, can't be affected. So all we can affect is this season coming and what's ahead of us. So are the players they've brought in better at doing that, whilst also being similar at defending from open play and things like that, and playing how we want to play? Are they going to enable us, along with the coaching, along with the training, along with everything that's been done, to improve in them areas, whilst at the same time not diminishing in other areas, not taking away from other areas? So I suppose that the simplest analogy would be to say, okay, if you wanted to be better at set pieces, you'd bring in 3 or 4 6'8" centre halves, and you'd be absolute. You shouldn't concede aerially, but they might not be able to get around the pitch, and then from open play you concede 15 more goals than you would do. So it's improving in them areas. It's improving all over, of course it is, but it's improving in them areas without detrimentally affecting any other parts of the team. And that can be in and out of possession, even though the defenders, because of this philosophy of how we play, we pass out from the back, we set things up, and we get on the ball and dictate games. These players that have come in, and like I said, we've not seen a great deal of them. It's all about what they do in the games that matter. They will show us whether the recruitment's been right, and that will prove itself in 44 league games' time. But we certainly hope they have, and it's with having the stats behind them, then the coaching staff and the manager, head coach, has got information to go, that's an area we need to improve in. And he can give that to the players, and he can do it on the training ground, and he can give them some actual stats and facts, if you like, to back it up and say, look, this was a weakness last season. We need it to be a strength this season. We need to improve. And if we do that, We cut that 14-point margin down as it was last season. So you're giving yourself a better chance to be right top of the tree. Like I say, the 19% bit, that'll flummox a few, but the principle is dead right. It is exactly right. Football and professional sport at any level is about trying to maximize what you can get out of any individual and any group of players. So in a defensive and a set piece scenario, we need to be better. And how do we get better? We practice, we do it. You speak to any manager and any team I ever played in, and any manager you ever hear speak about, what do they do? How do they get good at something? And they don't tell you when things aren't going well. They don't really tell you what they're doing. But when they've won something or when they're doing well, that's when they let the guard down and let a bit more out of the bag so you can take it. And all they ever say, whether it's Pep Guardiola, whether it's Jurgen Klopp, whether it's whoever, over the years, always says, it is repetition, repetition, repetition of doing it, practicing it, and you turn out get better. It's not luck that the more you do something, the better you get at it.
Plenty of observations coming in. Chris Jordan, it's always easier to improve anything if you can measure it. I'm all in favour of using the data. Lee Brearley says, stats are good to work on, but at the end of the day, you have to do the business for 90 plus minutes every game. Trevor Scanlon, if I remember correctly, Paul, when Jimmy Cyril came to the club, we were leaking goals like a sieve. And the first thing that he did was to get a solid defence, then progressed from there. Mick Dundee down in Australia. I'd like to have seen the club bring in 2 or 3 tall defenders that have good ball control as well as pace to have a high press. Hey, is there any club in the country? I mean, you're absolutely right, Mick. But is there any club in the country not looking for centre halves who are tall defenders that have good ball control as well as pace? Eh? And I'm not meaning facetious there, Mick, but finding those jewels is, of course, what, you know, it took Liverpool a while to get Virgil van Dijk, and then suddenly what happened, didn't it? Kelvin Hallam, a winning team is always based upon a good, strong foundation at the back between goalkeeper and centre backs, no matter what system or style of play. Foundation at the back and then team spirit. Keldstike, what the stats can't compute is the know-how that successful managers in this league have on how to get out of this league. Ask Martin Allen. We had Martin on a show earlier this week. Wonderful value talking about Barnet and just encyclopedic and very funny Josh Chambers, looking forward to the season, just slightly worried with the sloppy defending in pre-season at times. Every other area I think we're great, just need to work on defending personally. Okay, and a few more from Lee that I don't quite understand. Anyway, Stells, okay, I like to ask you $64 million questions as you are the Magpie Circle pundit of the year. How important is it that Notts County get promoted this season?
Well, it's everything, because this is this season. You know, like I say, all you can affect is what's immediately in front of you. First manager I had, Arthur Cox, always used to say the most important game is the next one, and it's been reiterated throughout, because that's the only one that you should focus on. It's the only one you can affect. What goes after that, who knows? So this season is the most important season because it's the one that's ahead of us. There's no point to saying, well, you know, it'll be all right if we just have a decent season but don't get promoted. You play professional sport to win things, to achieve things. The club is set up to progress. The owners want it to progress. The manager wants it to progress. The players want to progress. So it's vital. It's absolutely vital. We cannot sit around, or we cannot afford or don't want to be a club that can sit around like Lincoln did for 5 years when they got in the playoffs 5 consecutive years, never got promoted in the was it League Two. You know, we don't want to be a nearly team and stuck at this level for the next 5-10 years. We want to get out of it, and we want to get out of it this season. So from that aspect, it's vital. It's absolutely vital. But you look to Wrexham, Chesterfield, Stockport, Bromley, any of them other teams, Torquay is vital to them as well. But that's why you've got to hit the ground running. That's why it's got to be. It cannot be understated, the ruthlessness and the desire and drive. I speak about it a lot because they're the you know, the unfathomable. They're the imponderables. You cannot analyze it. You can't statistically analyze determination, drive, desire, hunger. You know, there is no measure of it. So you've got to show that, because there'll be other teams showing that. You've got to be hungrier. You've got to have more desire, more ruthlessness. You've got to be prepared to go that extra mile that your opponent won't go. If you're not as talented, you have to run further, run harder, be more determined. I suppose if I was going to epitomise it, we've mentioned him already. If we're going to epitomise what I'm talking about, is Dion Kelly-Evans in human form, in footballer form. I would say Dion Kelly-Evans, and I'm sure the Notts fans would agree with this. He is a Notts fans' favourite, not because he's got the silkiest skills at the club, not because he does something that nobody else can do, but he has got drive. You can see it coming out of every pore. And I did see his interview after the was it after training or after one of the games this week? It was a fantastic little interview where, you know, he just spoke like he was talking about his twin brother, and he's just signed for a club as well, you know, and a little bit self-deprecating, doesn't take it, but absolute determination, drive, absolutely what you need. And if you can epitomise that, characters like that within the dressing room, which we know we've got, you know, that transposes itself onto a team. I'm sure any manager that's achieved anything, Martin Allen might have said something along the best team will win this league. It won't come down to a Paul Mullin or a Danny Rowe or whoever you want to. Yes, there'll be a cog, but if they've disrupted a group, generally the best group. You look at Sutton last year, no individual star, but they won the league. Barrow the year before, Harrogate went up with them, you know, no individual standout one player that scored 25, 30 goals for the season, but they had a good team. Now, Notts have got a good team. They just need to go that extra step. And I think it's marginal. Although the league table said 14 points last season, yes, there are aspects. The set pieces we've come about, the defending crosses we've spoken about. But I think it's a mindset. It's a collective togetherness and determination and drive and desire to go from the very first game to the very last game. That's what can get you there.
Right. You've just won Pundit of the Year again with that spiel. I love that, Stells. I love that, Stells. I mean, and you actually used the word, and I was going to come on the back of that and use the word. And then you used it. Ruthlessness. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty ruthless in my support of Notts County. I'm pretty ruthless in, you know, in running my own companies and ruthless throughout my life. Because if you want to win, you can't win being nice. You know, yeah, there has to be a bit of a streak in you. And I think, you know, you absolutely summed that up. There's got to be a really, really ruthless mentality and a ruthless streak to this side of Notts going up. And I mean, I remember banging on last season when everyone said, you know, there's no chance, you know, we're going to get into the playoffs. Doesn't really matter. We'll go next season. Take whatever you can, whenever you can. And we got into the playoffs. Players were clearly good enough to be able to do that. And, you know, I remember the first season, you know, we should just be grateful that we've still got a club, all of that sort of thing. Well, we got to a playoff final, didn't we? And we lost in a playoff final. Gutting. And, you know, a lot of people, and I would have probably agree with them, this season this is our third campaign in the National League. I think this is by far the hardest to get out. By far the hardest to get out. There's no point bleating about it, right? The reason it's the hardest because other clubs on the face of it are looking to get their act together. And also because we weren't good enough the last two seasons to get out. We weren't ruthless enough. You know, if we performed against Harrogate, Neil Ardley would have been a hero. Yeah. Would have been straight back first attempt. 3 or 4 clubs have ever done it. We didn't. Oh, well, next season will be better. We know this. Ultimately, we fell a little bit further away. We weren't far off. I think this one is a really, really, really tough division to be involved in. But there's only ourselves to blame because we didn't get up in the last 2. You know, that's the reason. That's the reason.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. And what I certainly don't want us to be doing is in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time be sat here going, oh, if only we'd have beat Harrogate in that playoff final. Because you're right, that could well be, or well have been, our best chance to get promoted. You know, we were there, you're one game away, 90 minutes away, and it didn't happen. And then, like we see this season, last season, COVID and everything that went along with that, but it didn't happen.
But I don't, where I don't buy into things, Stel, is people. Some people will excuse the inability of Notts County, one of the biggest clubs in this division, with a very large budget, not to have got up. Right? Sutton got up. It was COVID. You know, it was a level.
Yeah.
You can argue Notts home games, bigger fans, but at the end of the day, COVID didn't just affect Notts County and Notts United.
No, absolutely, and I'm not using that as an excuse.
No, you're not.
I give them no excuse whatsoever. But on that, while we're on that, Sutton last season is why it doesn't matter who's spending what money on what players this season. Why not to have got just as good a chance? And it's in their own hands if they're ruthless, if they desire, if they play well, obviously. They get a bit of luck along the way. You have to have a bit of luck with injuries and things like that. Because Sutton didn't have the stars. They didn't spend loads of money. They assembled a good team, a good squad, and they got the job done. Most wins in a season. I've got my stats in front of me. You can tell.
I knew you would. I knew you'd.
I'll put it away for the rest of the season. That's it. Charlie's the stat man. Once you start. But yeah, most wins in a season. They didn't, you know, they lost games. They came to Notts and lost, didn't they, towards the end of the season?
That was our nation.
Have a wobble. You know, they didn't then have a nervous, oh, no, it might not happen. They just got on with it, got their heads down. We're good enough. Went and got the job done, got the points and got over the line. And they can look back, well, we got up. It was the COVID season. It's not an excuse for them. It's just fact. Like everyone else, it was the COVID season for Notts. They didn't get the job done. So this season, again, on paper, it looks harder because of all the money and all the big signings that we've seen from other clubs and the 3 or 4 other clubs we've mentioned that are having a real good go in terms of throwing money at it and signing on paper really good players. But as we've seen throughout football, having money and signing on paper really good players does not get the job done. It doesn't put you behind the 8 ball from the start. What it should do from a Notts perspective is galvanise that dressing room that wasn't far away for the last 2 years. The additions that come into it and go, hey, that's just took a bit of focus off us where we've been the big fish. So now let's quietly go about our business, be ruthless, be determined, show our quality, but just get our heads down and get on with it. That starts Saturday. We need 3 points at Barnet. We're not going to accept, if we come away with a point and go, oh, well, early season, yeah, fair enough. It just didn't quite. No, we want 3 points. Let's get the season up and running. Then you look at it. We've got 2 on paper tough games, Torquay and Wrexham. And I go back to repeating myself from last season. Notts' first 10 games, Torquay, Wrexham, obviously difficult games based on what we saw last season. And every game is difficult. It don't work like that. Yeah. But go through the 10 games. 8 very, very, very winnable games. Now, you imagine that for a start of the season, if they hit the ground running. Big if, easy doing it on paper, easy saying it. But the team that will win the league will not be losing the games that Notts lost, say, last season. The silly slip-ups. The games where we've got beat to a team we should never have got beat to. And I'm thinking Dover, first game of the season. The team that will win the league will have the least amount of them slip-ups. And when they do have a slip-up, they'll respond and come back. So it's there. It's everybody. I mean, there's no advantage. Everyone plays everyone twice, of course. But I think Notts have got to be that ruthless team that start, flat out, really on the go. And I expect them to win the game Saturday because Barnet, because of what happened last season, because they're in a rebuilding sort of phase, they've had some new players come in. They're trying to gel. So they've got no more or less excuses than Notts. I just think Notts should have too much quality. Win your first game. That sets yourself up. That sets yourself up for 2 really tough games on Bank Holiday weekend. But like I say, 44 games ahead of us, aren't they, this season? But I just look at them first 10 games. And if you had a chance to have a look at them, I suggest you have a look at them and, like I say, come back to me about 8 other games that you don't think Notts should win. And if you think we're sat with 8 wins out of 10, which I'm sure we maybe won't be, but it certainly is what the players should be aiming for, if not 10 out of 10, obviously. But there's got to be that belief and that desire and, again, ruthlessness to not get turned over. If you go to Stockport and get beat, or you go to Wrexham and get beat this season, you can sort of turn around and go, well, they're a good team. You know, they've got good players. It's not beyond the realms. It's not an embarrassment to go and get beat. But some of these teams, if you want to be top of the pile, go and beat them. Go and do it. Don't talk about it. Go and do it.
Very good. Kelvin Hallam, the ruthlessness should come from the fans as well, making it a difficult place to come to Meadow Lane like it used to be in the olden days. I'm sure everyone's going to be delighted to be back at Meadow Lane. Chris Jordan, on the back of what Stell just said, quotes, the best team always wins, the rest is only gossip. One of many immortal phrases from the late, great Jimmy Cyril. Chris Jordan makes a good point. This season could well be the last without a salary cap. I'll come on to that in a moment, Mark, which is why clubs are throwing the cash around to get up before that potential advantage is removed. This season, he says, is really important for Notts. So the National League, Mark, have put together a working party who are going to report back to the league with a recommendation for a salary cap for the following season after this. Clearly, that would have to be voted on by the clubs, and clearly there are going to be huge difficulties getting it in, given that clubs have spent such significant sums this summer. Figures that have been bandied around that I have led to believe were accurate, or were a month ago before the really big spending kicked in, was that the salary cap for the National League, National Division, would be 900,000. Now, clearly, Notts ain't going to be in that. Stockport aren't, Wrexham aren't, Solihull Moors wouldn't be. I would think a good half. Any thoughts on salary cap? Is it the way forward, or is it not? Is it in an artificial limiter? Should owners not be able to, left to fund as they see fit?
Well, it's a difficult one, isn't it? That I think just looking at the headline, I think everybody would pretty much agree that some sort of salary cap / financial fair play should be in place, because clubs are going under or being threatened with extinction. We've seen the likes of Bury and others, their communities lose their football club, if you like, because of spending beyond the means. So on a very basic level, yes, there's got to be something done about it. At the other end of the spectrum, you look at the top, financial fair play seems to have no hard and fast rules, because clubs at the very top end, the PSGs and your teams like that, can go and spend whatever they want and find a way around any sort of rules that are brought in to implement it. So I think on a very basic level, yes, I think a sort of a salary cap spending budget is sensible, but how that is administered and regulated and agreed on in the first place, and particularly in the National League, we saw clubs agreeing on whether we should stop, play, not play for COVID was difficult enough. Where do you start and stop at a salary cap? Because the likes of Notts, Wrexham, Stockport will argue that is, say, leveling the playing field, and the likes of your Kings Lynn's and your Wealdstones might argue that, well, so they should level the playing field. It's only fair. So you're going to get all different voices with all different sorts of opinion based on their own, what they've got at stake for themselves, what meat they've got in the game. So from my point of view, if they've got a working party on it, then great. Make it an independent working party, but get the working party to then dictate, find something that is legally enforceable and dictate. I'd say I always come back to strong leadership, Paul, whatever level that's at, but strong leadership, find something that works, find something that is reasonable, find something that is legal, because all this stuff gets legally challenged, doesn't it, if it's not liked. And then how enforceable is it, and how measurable is it? And I say we've seen tricks and things with sponsoring your own stadium and selling yourself your own stadium at ridiculous prices and all stuff like that. So it's a nice idea. Whether it'll ever come in, my suspicion is at National League level that they struggle to get ducks in order at the best of times. So something as major as this, I'll wait and see. I think it's a good idea in principle, but where you draw the line for it that sort of gets everyone on board with it, especially if they're all voting, then that's going to be interesting. It is a tough one. It is a very difficult one, because you're then sort of thwarting anybody who's got ambitions to go on. You know, they will say, well, we can spend if it's within our means, then so be it. But you know, it's finding a clear and legible and legally enforceable way of what is within a club's means.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit sceptical as to the ability of the league to bring it in. And Ian Burchnall kind of echoes my sentiments. He said if voting on salary cap is done the same way as the vote on increasing substitutes this season, it won't happen. There was a vote to increase substitutes from 5 to 7. Clearly, the bigger clubs prefer that. The smaller clubs feels it hands more of a competitive playing advantage to the bigger clubs. That wasn't voted through. So if there is that kind of shift of or balance of power, it's going to be hard for a salary cap, I would suspect.
But again, on that, Paul, for me, and okay, I get the constitution of the league might dictate that everything has to be voted on, everything has to have the say of the clubs. But for me, if you're the board of the league should be voted on at the beginning of the season, people be up for re-election every year and whatever. That's a decision that they can take. They can mandate 7 subs. There are 7 subs. They say if you can't field 7 subs, just field 5, just field 3, just field whatever you can. Field what you want. Field 2 young lads. Field your missus. Whatever. But that should. You can't put everything to the vote. You can't ask turkeys to vote for Christmas time and again. You know, it just seems. Again, it's the constitution. I know you've got to change the constitution and things, the way things are set, but things like that just frustrate. I'm sure that Ian Burchnall's frustrated with it. And I'm sure a few of the managers are frustrated with it, because, why handcuff yourself a little bit to say, well, then they're the maximum amount of substitutes. I'm pretty sure Barnet would have still finished bottom if there'd have been 5 substitutes, 7 substitutes, or 2 substitutes last season. Sutton would have still won the league no matter what. So that is, for me, that is a sort of a minuscule change that should be taken at board level. Doesn't need voting on by everybody. But hey ho.
I think that's a very, very valid point. And I'm sure throughout the season when we have you, we'll perhaps debate a little bit about evolution of the top tier of the National League becoming more in terms of more league clubs. Your point, 17 out of 20 clubs that have gone up have stayed up. And it is changing. So to now the National League is by and large comprised of as many historical football league clubs as it is historical non-league clubs. But I'm not sure the constitution and the people that ultimately wield the power in the National League is necessarily reflects that. I think it still reflects a largely non-league setup. I believe the new chairman of the National League is a gentleman who is the general manager of Bognor Regis Town. And I'm sure he does a fantastic job for Bognor Regis Town. Quite whether he understands running the challenges of running a professional football club with full-time professional staff all the way down with full-time players, I think is very different to running historically a club that functions through fundraising and that sort of thing. But we can discuss that another time. Stel, it's been great to have you on, as always, very insightful. We look forward to seeing you and presenting you with this in the Barnet press box. Lots of you will see you there, and those that aren't making the journey, I do believe it's something like 700-800 Notts fans have already bought tickets for that game. We'll be listening to you and Charlie via BBC Radio Nottingham. So that's all good. You've already nailed your colours to the mast. You've said you expect to win on Saturday. So I don't think you need to make any more predictions. I think we've done all those. We'll let you get your head back into some more statistical reading and let you further compute the 19% enhanced chance for winning the National League title, with a focus on conceding fewer goals from set pieces and scoring more goals from set pieces. Mark Stallard, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight, and look forward to welcoming you throughout the season.